Whether you're a competitive player that wants that extra field of view, or if you're a casual player that just wants a more immersive experience, an ultra-wide is really the best screen money can buy. Check the links in the description and comment section if you fancy taking a look at the monitors for yourselves. Starting off is a bit of an unconventional one perhaps, but trust me when I say it might be the coolest monitor you've ever seen. It's not technically ultra-wide, but rather super ultra-wide at 49 inches across, which means you've got the aspect ratio of two full-size 27-inch 16:9 monitors merged together. It will certainly be the center of attention in your gaming setup because it does seem a little ridiculous at first glance, but the more you use it, the more impressive it becomes. First of all, I'll state the obvious, you're gonna need a huge space to facilitate this particular monitor, but it's still more convenient than having two separate screens, of course. Outside of gaming, it also makes for a great productivity monitor because what you can do is split up multiple tabs or applications and spread them across the screen, which goes a long way when you want to get stuff done more efficiently. But more importantly, for gaming, it is simply remarkable for the low price of around $2,000. First of all, the resolution is 5120 pixels by 1440 pixels, which equates to having two QHD monitors side by side. That's not quite 4K, but closer to 2K, which still looks really good. But it won't have the same level of image clarity as perhaps a normal aspect ratio monitor sitting at 4K. However, to have that resolution across such a wide screen is still pretty impressive, so I wouldn't complain, and you're really paying for the immersion here. Equally impressive is the refresh rate because it sits at a more than generous 240 Hz, which is certainly more than anyone needs, not to mention the 1 millisecond response time. That and the fact that it has an AMD FreeSync and G-Sync makes me think that this monitor is just so well set up for super competitive games like PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, because you've essentially got double the view that a normal player wouldn't have, as well as significantly better image production and clarity, all of which all work towards making you a more effective player. Aside from the very obvious aspects, the Samsung Odyssey also offers an extremely vibrant color gamut and gets seriously bright, even in light rooms, and has pretty decent HDR as well. All in all, it's an incredibly impressive monitor that'll go beyond satisfaction. It is, however, a very niche monitor because it really does depend on your setup space and now toning it down just a notch, we have the Gigabyte G34 WQC, a less wide monitor but perhaps a bit more of a conventional one. It's 34 inches across and rocks a 21:9 aspect ratio, as you can expect from standard ultra-wide. For $500 or a quarter of the price of the previous super ultra-wide Samsung Odyssey, the Gigabyte monitor will offer up a great gaming experience with its 144 Hz refresh rate and 1 millisecond response time. Yeah, it's pretty well equipped for those fast-paced games, but especially so for the competitive games that really benefit from less input delay and smoother frames. For some games, not necessarily all, but for some games the ultra-wide aspect ratio will offer up a wider field of view. It won't be as wide as the super ultra-wide, but nothing really is. Although it is curved, which is super awesome for immersion and makes it so much easier to see the corners of the screen in the peripheral vision. In terms of actual picture quality that you can expect from the screen, well, it's certainly not disappointing. It's 3440 pixels by 1440 pixels, which in dumber terms is considered to be closer to 2K than 4K. But again, with the width of the screen, that makes sense. Where this particular monitor does shine is in dark room situations because of its VA panel, which can be both a good or a bad thing. But regardless, in dark rooms, it gets really contrasting. Blacks are deeper and lighter colors are more distinguishable, and it's one of the few monitors that has noticeable decent HDR. And while it does superbly in dark rooms, that's not to say it's bad in bright rooms either, because it's actually such a bright screen that it does a great job at mitigating glare. However, you will find more enjoyment playing in a darker room. The Nitro XV340CK by Acer is the only ultra-wide monitor on this list to have a flat screen, which could be either a good or a bad thing depending on each individual. At 34 inches, the lack of curve is kind of confusing because it makes it just that little bit harder to see the corners of the screen when up close gaming. To that extent, it may not be as desirable for competitive gamers. However, the flatness is much better if you plan on keeping a fair distance away from the screen or just want to double its use as a general screen to watch entertainment on. Each to their own, although what I can preach about the Nitro is that it is an exceptional ultra-wide. It looks super sleek with its slim bezel design, and actually having it flat just means that it blends into setups much more easily. The most noticeable specifications are its 3440 pixels by 1440 pixels, 144 Hz, and has a 1 millisecond response time, which is pretty crazy considering it's a budget monitor. It also has an AMD FreeSync, G-Sync, and HDR, of course. That's not to say it doesn't have its drawbacks, because in the wrong lighting condition, the colors on the screen can appear somewhat washed out. But the appeal of this one has to simply just be the budget friendliness, because it comes in at just around $400, which is not a small number. The LG 38GL950GB is a mouthful to say, but don't let the boring name deter you, because this 38-inch monitor is both huge and seriously good. Weirdly, it has a bit of an awkward resolution of 3480 by 1600 pixels, so it lies somewhere above 2K, sort of. The quality of that picture is really something, because the screen gets super bright, but can appear a little dim in darker rooms, unfortunately. Although I'm sure most people play in relatively well-lit rooms, so that shouldn't be a massive issue. Besides, with HDR enabled, the colors and deep blacks look about as clean as can be. This particular model does have NVIDIA G-Sync, but sadly lacks AMD FreeSync, which it may not be the best option for AMD hardware users. If you do exclusively rock NVIDIA hardware, then it's actually perfect, because even though the refresh rate is 144 Hz naturally, you can actually overclock it up to 175 Hz to get an even bigger competitive edge. Naturally, with a refresh rate as overkill as that, it does also have a 1 millisecond response time, so input is super snappy, and any competitive gamer would be happy to have it. On to the best of the best, and that is once again an LG monitor. But hey, LG does great stuff. The inventively named 34G and 850B is really the all-arounder of ultra-wide monitors. I mean, it's certainly no super ultra-wide Samsung Odyssey that costs $2,000, but it'll do more than impress, which is why it's the top pick. And it costs half of that too, at $1,000. It's absolutely one of the more sleek-looking monitors that you can get, and I personally love the red and black aesthetic. Looks great and performs even better, which is kind of a necessity on a 34-inch ultra-wide screen. The resolution sits at 3440 pixels by 1440 as expected, but interestingly, it has a 144 Hz refresh rate, which can be overclocked via the DisplayPort to reach up to 160 Hz. On a curved screen, that'll look super fluid. Paired with both AMD FreeSync and NVIDIA G-Sync support, you've got a panel that'll never experience any kind of stuttering or blurring regardless of your PC hardware. It also has a swift 1 millisecond response time, so it's really well set up for competitive gaming from the get-go. Unlike most other monitors on this list, this LG uses an IPS panel, so it has really great viewing angles. Regardless of the angle you sit at, the image will appear the same, with fully vivid colors and distinctly contrasting colors. That's something VA panels suffer from, but not IPS. However, the one issue with this is that the IPS panel can appear a little bit washed out if you use the monitor in darker conditions. But as long as you don't play in the dark, then it'll look great and actually really vibrant. Anyways, what do you think? Please be sure to check the links to the monitors in both the description and comment section if you fancy taking a look at them for yourselves. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.